Business Growth Talks podcast is created and hosted by Mark Hayward. In this show, we talk about how to grow a business in the growth stage. The growth stage is often marked by rapid developments, increased revenue, and an escalating customer base. In each episode, we talk to entrepreneurs and business owners who have grown businesses, and we cover topics like scaling processes, market expansion, financial management, human resource and talent development, and customer retention. If you are looking for actionable advice, tips, and techniques on how to grow, run and build your business, this is the podcast for you.
Today, we have Mark Asquith, who is a successful podcaster, entrepreneur, and content marketer. We have known each other for a few years, and I tell you, this has been long overdue, so I'm really pleased that Mark is here today. Mark started Captivate, which is a podcast hosting platform, podcast websites, and productivity, a podcast engagement company. Captivate got acquired by Global, which is a leading UK media company, in December 2021, and is now MD of the company. He's also a podcast host of Spark the Rebellion, a Star Wars themed podcast. And Mark has spoke at amazing events, places like TEDx and Harvard, just to name a few. Mark is based in Sheffield, UK. And if you're enjoying this content, please do consider subscribing and you won't miss an episode. Hello, Mark. How are you today?
I'm pretty good. Thank you, sir. Thanks for having me.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you so much. As I said, we have known each other for a few years. We've both been in events and circles that we've been together. So I'm really excited to hear. We're going to primarily focus on Captivate, but we will be talking about other things as well. So thank you for joining me. So the first question I ask all of my guests is, what does a business mindset mean to you?
It's difficult to think of a different mindset for me, because I've been doing this now. This is my 21st year having some kind of business. I'm probably in my 19th year where it was the thing that I did full time. I was a business person. Don't like the word entrepreneur at the minute. Okay. So we'll maybe get to that later. But yeah, the business mindset for me is, I think it's twofold. I think it's two sides of the same coin. I think selfishly, it's about being able to do what you enjoy doing and balance that with things that you enjoy doing outside of quote unquote work. So I think the work life, not the balance of it, because I'm not sure you ever balance it, but I think the work life flow, I think is important. Certainly my goal for setting up in business was to have the mindset of, when I've got a little girl, when I've got a little boy, when I've got a kid, I don't have to miss anything. I can go to the practices, I can go to the concerts, I can drop her off at school, can pick her up at school and whatever else. On the other side of that coin, I think the mindset is very much about, actually, whilst I need to do something that I enjoy doing, I need to be solving at least one good problem for people that they will enjoy having solved for them. And I think when you put those two things together, you stop seeking out the business side of things and you start just living the life, and that's where the success comes from. But yeah, it's an interesting one, really. It's an interesting one. I don't think you ever get out of that business mindset either. I think it's, once you're in it, I don't think it leaves you.
Yeah. So flexibility for me, becoming an entrepreneur, was massive. It was a really big game changer. And I understand why that's important for you. And as you say, like, you don't miss things that the kids are doing and stuff like that, which is amazing. But the other point of that you never really switch off. Do you actually, like over Christmas, for example, we're recording this on the 23rd of January. Did you get a lot of time where you completely switched off from work, or was there things that were going on in your brain, or how did you deal with Christmas?
I think that's a bit of a multi-layered answer. So yeah, I got plenty of time off. That's always been my thing. I've never worked over Christmas. I do support at Captivate, but I don't see that as work. I actually enjoy doing that. I'll do a few hours here and there, and that's just, I actually enjoy that. But I don't do my normal day-to-day work. I'll do other things. So I always get downtime. That's always something that I've always been really keen on, Christmas. That said, my brain never stops, but it's not because it needs to carry on. It carries on because it wants to carry on. So I have most of my best ideas when I'm out of the business world. So I'll have ideas over Christmas. Very often, certainly before COVID, I used to do so much travel. Like I was in the US 6 months of the year, just working in podcasting, speaking at events, whatever. And that's how we grew the business. And all of my ideas, like the idea for Captivate's most revered features, usually come when I'm actually not in the work zone, but I've been around work. I've been around podcasters. I've been around people, and it starts to formulate these ideas. And I think the other big thing as well around that is that I got into what I do now because I was a podcaster anyway. So I've got Spark of Rebellion that we talked about, but I've also published 1,400 podcast episodes around podcasting, educating on podcasting through the Podcast Accelerator. I've done it through my 7-Minute Mentor. I've done it through my old show, Excellence Expected, which was very similar to this show. And I've done thousands of podcast episodes. So I am the target audience for Captivate. And I always say this, I would be podcasting anyway. I would be podcasting if I didn't work in podcasting. So it was very fortunate for me that I get ideas based on the merging of me doing my own stuff, my podcasts and my creation. And I have ideas for Captivate, usually on the downtime, because all the worlds are molding together. I've been around creators. I am a creator myself. I've been around the Captivate team. I've been around, let's say for argument's sake, I've got a podcast, Movement Evolutions in LA. I've been around the industry. So yeah, the ideas never stop, but I do focus a heck of a lot on downtime. It's one of the things actually post-acquisition, I get more downtime now. When you're running a business yourself and you're on the payroll of your own business, and you know that you'll always be the last to get paid if anything goes wrong, or rightly. You don't stop because you're driving towards something. And whilst we're still hugely driving forward and hugely driving towards something, I've got a little girl, she's coming up to 2 years old. Like, the balance has shifted ever so slightly. So when it gets to 5:30, actually, I want to be cooking tea for her. I'm not going to be worried too much. We do get little bits that come up now and again, but that's why you're the MD. We operate at a very high level within Captivate, obviously. And every now and again, you do have to switch on for 20 minutes because something needs your attention. But that's very rare because the team are fantastic and the product's very stable. So, yeah, it's not a straightforward answer, that one. I think the downtime is very important. But I would suggest it's more about the self-care element of it. Look after yourself. Like, I train hard at the gym. I'm 4 or 5 times a week at the gym. I'm big into golf, big focus around that and just getting better. And that's where my downtime comes from. And that might be 30 minutes at lunchtime in a golf simulator, or it might be a day off. I've booked a day off because I need a day off. But yeah, I think it depends. I don't think you ever quite stop. I just lost you there, mate. You just muted. Or something. Can you hear me? Yeah. No. Now, what's going on there? There we go.
Are we back?
Yeah, you're back.
Okay. Let me just put a note of the time. Oh, for God's sake, this thing. Okay, I'm going to go into the next question, I think.
Yeah.
Next question. Tell me one thing about your upbringing which reflects on who you are today.
I sold my company and I still save up for things that I want. I could just buy them. If anyone watching on YouTube, there's a putter in the background there.
Right.
I've got 2 of those. It's the 2 of the same Scotty Cameron Newport Super Select putters. One of them's just getting sent off for customizing, and the other one's staying here to be not customized. Both the same spec. I saved out of my personal wages that I get paid every month, as well as obviously what we'd sold the company for. I get paid a salary every month from Global, and every month I save 30 quid a month. And it took me like a year and a half to buy those 2 putters, and then another 10 months to save up for the customization. I could just buy them. Like, I could just buy them, but I don't, because I didn't have anything much growing up. I'm from a council estate in Barnsley, mining town. It was get out of Barnsley or not have any prospects. Didn't do college, didn't do university. I said before this recording, I've got a massive ADHD brain, which, like, my attention span is shocking if I don't love what I'm doing. If the thing that I'm doing is not, if I'm not losing myself in it for 10 hours, I can't focus. And I struggle with conversations because my mind's wandering all the time. But that's what's served me so well in business.
Yeah.
That's where the ideas come from. It's where the ability to do things has come from. And we've seen some success. We've sold the company. I probably wouldn't need to work if I didn't want to, but I love doing it. And I still save up for everything. I've got a savings pot in my Monzo that siphons off money for my golf membership every month or whatever, like the new putter. I'm a big Star Wars fan, bit of a collector. I've got got an Obi-Wan and an Anakin Hot Toys figure that are like 300 quid each. Again, I could buy them, but I save up for them every month out of my salary just because that's what I've always done. It's not something that I'm eager to give up because I think it's a great value to instill into our kid and to make sure that she understands the value of working hard and going through the process of really earning something. So yeah, that's probably the biggest thing, mate. That's probably the biggest thing. There's probably a lot more, but it all stems from, if you've ever seen my TEDx talk, it stems from all of that I talk about in there. So yeah, it's huge.
Yeah, I think delayed gratification is a really important aspect because as entrepreneurs, when you're trying to do things or you're trying to achieve things, you have to delay your satisfaction, your enjoyment of things, because you have to build it and you have to grow it and you have to see results, and that doesn't always come in the first few weeks. So I think that is actually a really good point for entrepreneurs that are listening, for business owners that are listening. That whole idea, and you're doing it, you're practicing it on when you're buying a new putter or you're buying a new Star Wars merch. You're doing that and saying, I want that and I want to achieve that and I want to buy that, but I'm going to do it over 3 months, 4 months, 2, 3, 4 months to be able to achieve that. What other characteristics, as you don't like the word entrepreneur, as a business owner, do you think really personifies you as a business owner? What characteristics do you think are best for you?
I think that's probably a good point to get into, actually, the entrepreneur side, just for that, because this is a characteristic that's served me really well. I don't like the entrepreneur tag because it's been taken over by the online entrepreneur gurus from the early 2010s that started selling quote unquote financial freedom, and it's absolute rubbish. And most of these people, I know a lot of these people, I'm in those circles, and I guarantee you 90% of those people, the story that they tell public is not the story that's true. The person that starts whatever, a content business, an audio business, a YouTube business, a podcasting business, and said they bootstrapped it with nothing and they did it all themselves. I know that's not true. They had savings, their parents gave them the money, they put that money into it. All right. I know, but they don't tell these stories. Now, that's why I don't like the word entrepreneur, because people focus too much on the label. People focus too much on, I will achieve the status that gives me absolutely nothing in return, just so that I can feel like I've achieved something that other people will respect. When actually, I'm a business person. I'm a business owner. All right. And I've got some other businesses. I've got my podcast websites business, which was my original business. That still runs. We don't accept new customers. We've closed that off, but it serves the customers that we've got. And I've always been a business person. And the difference with a business person, in my view, is that they just want to get their head down and get stuff done. So podcasting is a great example of this, right? When we came into podcasting in 2012, 2013, I came in and was very respectful to everyone, very respectful. The other hosting companies, they were cool towards us. There were 2 or 3 incumbents back in the day. It's not like it is now. We were in there very early as a bit of a challenger. They were pretty cool to us. They weren't that nice to us, but that's all right. And my job was to just get my head down, build a good business, build good product, and be nice to them and be respectful and to build bridges, and now fast forward 10 years time, they've got masses of respect for what we've done because we didn't do what a lot of entrepreneurs did in the space. And I say that because a lot of entrepreneurs came into podcasting 5 years ago, 4 years ago, 3 years ago, thinking it was a big boom. There was a lot of money. And they were going very gung-ho. They were slating some of the incumbents. They were saying, these people are rubbish because they're not me. And it was silly. There's a few of them that I can think of. And they alienated everyone. And guess what? They aren't in podcasting anymore. But like I said, fast forward 10 years from when we got into it, respect is earned. We are now very close with every one of the major hosting platform founders and C-suite execs. Just this year in LA, in Podcast Movement, I'm putting a panel on, and I've brought together some of these people, some of the upper echelons of the people driving the industry forward.
Right.
And we're all friends. And that's come through. Just get your head down, build a good product, be nice, be respectful, listen to what people are saying, be firm with your opinion, but be willing to change your opinion if it's proven that you're simply wrong. Be humble. And I think that's the difference, is that I have just focused on building business. That's it. I want to serve a good customer base with good product and amazing customer service. That is it. And that is all we've ever done. And that is all I will ever do. And like you said, the thing that served me well is ignoring that entrepreneur tag. Someone said to me years ago, "You're very entrepreneurial." And I said, that's fine. I will be entrepreneurial, but I never want to be labeled an entrepreneur, because Richard Branson's an entrepreneur and Steve Jobs is an entrepreneur. I'm not. I'm a small business owner. And if I forget that, then I'll start doing, I've seen gurus at Podcast Movement, and they know who they are, where they go to Podcast Movement, they charge money for meetups for their quote unquote fans to go and see them. And then they'll do the meetup, give 1 hour at a time, and they'll leave, and they won't walk the conference floor. They won't go to any other meetups themselves, because they've got a high-level private dinner with other entrepreneurs that are they've all just made it up. It's all rubbish. And I know that these guys are not as successful as many other people that I know. So I think that understated level of success is where you will continue to build great business, versus chasing the tag and chasing the recognition. Recognition comes after hard work and you've delivered time and time again. That's when you get recognition that lasts. And I think that's important. So that stuck with me for years. I've always imbued the idea of do the hard thing if it's the right thing. And that's always stuck with me, mate. So yeah, it's an important lesson.
It is. And I think your trends and things that people say, like in COVID times, every entrepreneur influencer was talking about, oh, you need a webinar. So everyone started setting up webinars. Like 2 or 3 years before that, it was all about courses that they needed to sell. I think there is just something for business owners that have a product or service and aim to deliver the best product or service to their customers. That's not someone trying to jump on a trend to sell a course or sell a webinar. It's actually people building things. And I think there is a massive distinction. And I think you've articulated that exceptionally well. So I would 100% agree with that. Before we go into Captivate, I was intrigued by what now is called Rebel Base Media. So tell me about your co-founder, Kieran, because I don't think he gets a lot of a shout out. So I wanted to hear a little bit about that. But Rebel Base Media, you described it as your place to be able to come up with ideas for other businesses that you've created. So tell me a little bit about Kieran and Rebel Base Media.
Yeah, so Kieran's my co-founder in everything. I've worked with Kieran now for over 10 years. I used to have a design and brand agency and digital agency, which is why we got started in what we did in podcasting. And Kieran was a developer there, very young developer, and we started podcasting endeavors together. So our first business in 2013, late 2013, was podcast websites, which was a sort of a bridging business, got us to where we are now in podcasting. It was a WordPress as a service before anyone else was really doing it. It was a monthly subscription to WordPress support, install, management, so on and so forth. We've still got podcasters that use that. It's a great product and a great service. And we were the first to ever do it in podcasting. And the important thing with that is that it allowed us, because we were very profitable from day one. We partnered with a big affiliate partner, and we were able to generate profit and income early on. So I was able to transition out of running my agency into this with Kieran. Now, what that did was it allowed us then, because we were so early in podcasting, people forget this. They don't, because it's all over my damn Twitter profile. But we were in podcasting super early. Like I remember going to the digital support network in Barnsley that we worked really close with because we were digital people, and saying I'm starting a startup in podcasting. They basically called me an idiot. And I was like, fine, whatever. And now they're asking me for advice, which is ironic. So no one cared about podcasting, but I saw how big it was and how big it was going to be because I was very plugged into the US market. I put a lot of my own money into going out to Podcast Movement. And from day one at Podcast Movement, I spoke at Podcast Movement. It wasn't like I'll just attend. I was like, oh, why not? I'll just apply to speak. Got to know Jared and Dan very well, and that's why we know a lot of people there. Now, to bring it back to Rebel Base Media, because of all of that, I was walking the floor. Now, so put together all these constituent pieces, right? There's Kieran, who's a fantastic developer. That's me, that's a lapsed developer / product guy. I'm really good with user journey and developing product and seeing where people are going to need the product to be as opposed to where it is now. So there's me and him. We're running a WordPress as a service platform which is fine in podcasting. We're at every major podcasting event, plus a lot of minor podcasting events. I used to travel out to New Jersey for an event with like 80 people there. That's how much I cared about it. And we're seeing all of these problems, and we can build solutions to pretty much any of them because we've got the tech skills and we've got the ability to do that. So what we did was we knew that the podcasting ecosystem was going to blow up. So we created a number of different solutions. We had the podcast websites business. We used to have podcast design studio. We've got Productivity, which is a startup that's very much around a patent focus. We started Captivate. And then in Sheffield, we had a recording studio, and we did consulting, branded podcasts, and helped agencies and so on with that. Now, all of that needed a collective. And that's what Rebel Based Media was. It was this idea that actually we're never going to stop coming up with ideas. So that can be a bit of a playground. Now, inevitably, some things took off, some things didn't. We sunsetted things like Podcast Design Studio. We were making good money with it, but it was a lot of time. You were basically a design agency again, and we got out of being a design agency for a reason. So we sunsetted it, we closed it. We said we don't want to do service work because it's very heavy. Podcast websites, when Captivate started really taking off, we said, actually, we need to be able to service the customers that we've got on podcast websites really well. And it's not fair to them if we keep taking customers because we're getting busier with Captivate. So we put a stop on new customers. COVID hit, we closed down the studio because obviously it was COVID. We couldn't do anything. And then halfway through, probably a year and a half later or whenever it was, we got acquired by Global. So we didn't need to go into Sheffield anymore because we never came back to Sheffield after COVID. I'm now actually based a bit more near Manchester. So Rebel Based Media was the group that Kieran and I put together to build other things. And then because Captivate got so busy, we sunsetted the other stuff. We've still got Productivity, which is very much it's a tech patent setup, which is fantastic. And then we've got podcast websites where we serve our customers there. But we didn't need Rebel Based Media because we closed the studio, and we weren't, honestly, we're that focused on Captivate, even post-acquisition, that we just didn't need it anymore. So it was, that's the background to it.
So let's fast forward to January 2019 when you set up the podcast hosting, analytics, and distribution platform. So tell me how it was set up and why you set it up.
So we already had all of the stuff that Captivate did in its first iteration. We already had that within podcast websites. We were already doing podcast hosting. We were already doing distribution to Apple, already doing distribution to Stitcher as it was at the time, and all of the other places. So what we did was we realized that podcast websites was very much a specific service that helped specific people, and the addressable market within podcasting was reasonably small. It was relatively high ticket, so that was fine. It was like $100 a month, but we wanted to help more people, and we got so many people saying to us, can you just do a hosting platform that competes with Libsyn and Buzzsprout and Blueberry? So we did. We built Captivate out, started it in January 2019 in terms of the build. I did the UX and UI for it, and Kieran did the back end and the development on it. We launched it into alpha with our first ever customer, Ian Anderson Gray, mid-April 2019. Launched into beta at Podcast Movement in August 2019. By December, we'd exceeded our target of 10 grand MRR, monthly recurring revenue, by 45-50%. And then we just kept doubling and doubling turnover through 2020. And it just, we had a real focus as well on this. Our goal was just to be good. Like, we had a good interface that no one else had at the time. Like, the best out there was Buzzsprout, which is still a bit 2008. And we had a great interface. Every week we released new features. We were constantly in the news, constantly getting PR, constantly battering people with product release after product release. And it grew because of that. And all the product releases that we did were driven by my ADHD brain and having done 1,400 podcast episodes. Okay, here are 10 things that we've released that seem common sense, but no one else has ever done. And it just got us a heck of a lot of customers. And that's what we still do that to this day. That's our business. So that's where it came from. And we were fortunate. This is the thing that no one really sees. Like, we got customers on day one. Captivate was profitable from alpha, like the day that we opened it in alpha. Why? Because for 6 years, people had seen Kieran and I at every podcasting event. They'd drunk with us. They'd eaten with us. We used to put these mega meetups on before COVID at events. They'd all been to them. They'd seen me speak. They'd seen me educate. They'd seen me give all my time and all my effort for free for years and years. So when we released something, they just went, it must be good because it's those guys. even though it looks like a quick success, like we went from alpha in January 2019 to acquisition in December 21. And it looks like an overnight quick success, but it wasn't. It was 6-7 years of like red-eye flights, missing birthdays, missing family events, nearly killing ourselves, being so tired between events and jet lag and all sorts of other little sacrifices that you don't necessarily see. I used to spend that much time in the US. I used to get searched every time I entered the country. They thought I was running some sort of scam because there didn't seem to be a good reason for me to be there every 6 months. Every couple of months. So yeah, that's the background, mate. That's the top level story of it.
Who is the person in the business that looks after the finances? Because financial management is one of the pillars of growing a business. Who's the guy that looks after that side?
Actually, we both, when we first started and right up until probably like a couple of months ago, we both did that. Kieran does a lot of he's a very logical maths brain. We sat down from day one and we built out projections that we hit within 5%. We did that every year. We've just done it now. We're part of Global and we still do it. So we both really tightly projected everything. We knew our costs, we knew our incomings, we knew our MRR, we knew every facet of the business. We knew what would happen and when financially. That's why little things like we were 6 months old and we were able to put 40 grand into IAB certification. We were the only independent hosting platform in the world that had IAB certification because we'd budgeted for it. And that's what we'd budgeted for all the events. We budgeted for things like server upgrades and scalability, all of it.
I think that's really interesting. And so one of the things, because we've got a podcast guesting agency and the US market is very important to us. And podcasting is obviously a much larger market in the US. But why did you said you spent lots of times the flights over to the US events and meetups and things. Why for you was the US market so important?
It was the only market in the world. There wasn't another market. That was it. Easy as that, simple. The rest of the world didn't care about podcasting. Like I said, I got laughed out of the Digital Media Center in Barnsley, which ironically we've now got an office again in. And it was the only market. There were no events here. I remember going to New Media Europe in 2016 that Mike and Isabella put on. That was the only event. Didn't happen. I think they did 2 of them. Didn't happen because the market wasn't there. Casting started to really get a grip pre-Serial when all the gurus entered it. It was fine. There's nothing wrong with that. And then it really took off when Serial hit. But the percentages in the UK just didn't matter because I can't remember the numbers back then exactly, but there were less than 200,000 podcasts around in the world when I got into podcasting, like something like 160,000. And as a percentage of people that had listened to podcasting, knew what podcast was, the percentage was tiny. I can't remember the numbers. We can look at Edison or whatever, but 5-10% perhaps. In the US, that's a big enough market to sell services to.
Yeah.
You can sell a hosting platform to 10% of the US market. You can't to the UK market, especially when the US had more of a proclivity to want to create content as well back then. It's funny because people now, they'll come up. I was at the gym the other day, Des, one of the guys, PTs up there, he's like, "Oh, I listen to your podcast. I see you're in podcast." I was like, "Mate, like, I appreciate that, but I'm more about the tech distribution." And when I get to talk to people, they're holy crap, you genuinely were probably one of the first 4 people from England and the Great Britain in podcasting. Holy crap, we didn't realize that. And it's because no one knew about podcasting until it really took off in the US. And it's only the last 3 or 4 years here that general people, like the builders, when we had some work done on the house, the builders like, I listen to Joe Rogan. I'm like, yeah, it's a bigger world than Joe Rogan. Let's talk about it. So yeah, that's why, man. The market was nowhere else. There just simply wasn't another market. There just wasn't another market. And that's why we've been very fortunate. Like, we know all the players. We know everyone just because we were there at the beginning of it. So yeah, that's why.
Awesome. So from Captivate's journey, not your journey the years before, but Captivate moved from conception, building, growing to acquisition relatively quickly. What did you have an end game? I say an end game. Did you have an idea of an acquisition And did you want to be acquired? Was that part of the plan when you were growing the business, or did it just happen?
No, we never wanted to be acquired as an active goal. My goal has remained the same. Anyone that's seen my TEDx, if you just Google it, Mark Asquith TEDx, you'll find that it's very much about the thought being that you want to, the goal being money. But that's actually the wrong goal. It's all about you want to control your life and control what you spend your time on so that you can find your own version of happiness. And that was it. Captivate was very profitable, and it is still very profitable from day one, and like a lot of profit. We were doing fine, like getting paid plenty of money, enjoying what we do. No boss. We're fine. No problem.
So how did they contact you?
So what happened was spring, summer of 2020, Sam and I, my wife, got pretty much almost stranded in San Diego when COVID hit. We had to get the last flight out of San Diego, which was a right killer. We'd been at all these events, all these podcasting events. We knew someone that runs a big network, not a big network, but a good network in the US. We'd just seen them, spent some time with them. Fast forward to summer 2020, we were contacted by a private equity firm, and then because they basically wanted to get into podcasting. So we didn't want to sell because it was trending upwards. It was the wrong time to sell. Mid-2020. We actually had another hosting platform contact us. They wanted to buy it. We didn't pursue that one very far. And we had another hosting company do the same thing. All around the same time, mid-2020. But we knew we didn't want to sell. So we did two things just to see what would happen. We ran through the process of due diligence to a degree, because then it helped us. Because we were so good at budgeting, we wanted to see how those accounts would stack up. And was the business worth something? We didn't know. The second thing we did was we put it on a site called Micro Acquire. And we just said, we want X million for a podcast hosting company. We didn't. We weren't interested in selling it. The valuation was silly low. It was just one of those things. But we didn't know what the climate was like. We didn't know what was going on. And we took it off after about a week because we'd got enough inquiries to realize that, frankly, it was all rubbish. Now, the reason that we did that mainly was to see, because everyone goes on about it. Oh, you're in a position where you should probably start thinking about getting acquired. And I was like, yeah, but the money that we'd sell for we can earn that money. That's cool. There's no point. We went through that process to realize that we didn't want to get acquired. So it was great. We were like, this is amazing. Mid-2020, head down, jobs are good, and we're fine. We'll just crack on. October 21, we'd gone through a number of talks with another company in the industry, and we realized that it wasn't going to be fit. We didn't want to get acquired. The profits had shot through the roof. And I did a catch up. I had a call with the network that we met in 2020. We met at Podfest. And he said, look, I know this guy who works for this company, Dax. I know Dax. I got to know one of the guys over there. I knew them pretty well already. So we reconnected. And Dax is part of Global. So Dax then recommended it to Global and just said, you should probably talk to Mark and Kieran. And someone at Global rang us in October. Someone who's got massive respect for everyone at Global. Absolutely love the team and love being part of it. They rang us and just said, look, flat out, we want a hosting company. Do you want to get acquired? And we're like, honestly, we've been through all this crap. If we're not looking for it, but if it fits. Now, there were a few big differences with Global. The first one was we instantly got along. Like, with everyone. And it's amazing. We still do. They're a fantastic team. Secondly, they're English. So no messing around with selling assets to the US and whatever. There can be a pure share sale, a genuine sale. And they liked the way that they valued the speed at which we do things and the way that we approach things. So that was October. We already, because we're so tight on projecting everything, we'd done all our finances, not for anyone or for acquisition, but just because we wanted to as a startup. We were so good at projecting. We just sent them the projections. We had the accounts, we sent them the due diligence. We didn't really need to do any work because we're all so anal about it anyway. And yeah, the acquisition was announced 20th of December, less than 2 months later. It went through really quickly. That was 2021. Now, the timing was interesting from my side. Sam and I were due to have our first little girl in February 22. So for me, it was great timing. It was actually, all right, do you know what? For the first time in nearly 20 years, I can probably work 8-hour days and I can help out. And I'm still working at home, so I get to spend some time with a little one. So it was really good timing from my perspective. And knowing that a lot of the other people that wanted Captivate were going to strip it for parts. They wanted to just plug it into their own ecosystem, which were crap. They were crap ecosystems. We knew that Global didn't want that. They wanted us. They wanted the team. And they basically said to us, come in. The only people that we report to are the board. We don't report to anyone but the board of Global. Come in at a very high level, run this for us. And there's absolutely, it's not, okay, you've got to stay for X amount of time and then you're off or whatever. It's just, we want this. We want you. Welcome.
So why did you, just jumping in there, why did you stay as MD? Why did you move over to MD? Why didn't you say, I'm going to sell this, I'm going to have a bit of freedom, a bit of absolute time off? Why did you move into the global ecosystem within Captivate?
It's piles of fun. Why would I not? Captivate was only 2 years old, man. Right? You don't get bored of a startup after 2 years. If you do, that's a problem. Yeah, no, I still love podcasting. I'm as driven as I've ever been with it. The other side of the coin, two sides of the coin. I'm interested in the bigger business of podcasting. I am. A lot of people don't necessarily see this when they talk to me about Captivate. A lot of my life and a lot of my experience in podcasting is talking about mega shows. It's looking at the deals that mega shows are doing. It's working with shows that get 10 million downloads a month, as well as the people that get 10 downloads a month. So that's why I speak at industry events, and I can generally talk about most things in podcasting because I've been in it that long and my experience is that tight in podcasting, but that varied within it. So Global for me was a great opportunity to do more of that. I get to work with a great SMT team. I get to work with the DAX team. I get to work with the global player team. I get to work and look at we launched the news agents. What else do we do? What made that successful? How can I take the lessons that we've learned as the news agents at X amount of revenue per year and apply that to our podcasts? So it's massively interesting. And what else would I do? I could play more golf. Of course I could, but there's only so much I can do. So Plus, our little girl will be at school in a year or so's time. I get bored, man. I would work in podcasting anyway. And this is genuinely the best place to work. Genuinely, I love it.
Has the culture changed since Global took over?
Not a scrap. We actually became part of Global, and they loved us, and we loved them because we were culturally very similar. And no, not at all. We're essentially we barely get touched. It's business. It's been business as usual, and it sounds really cliche. It sounds like everyone says that after a startup, and then after a year or two, things change. Genuinely hasn't. It's the same. It's the same. So yeah, that is fascinating. It's really good. No, the culture is exactly the same.
So what's the plan for market expansion? So where are you looking to build the business going forward into 2024 and beyond?
I can't tell you too much about the plans because the competitors get hold of it and they'd be worried. But the bottom line is just more of the same. It's just keep building the thing with product and people in mind and just keep doing that. We do have some big plans. I genuinely can't say anything about. I would get sacked.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
The driver is always build good product for people. Always put service first. Never change that. Always stick to what we've always done. I genuinely don't think you could find anyone on the planet that would say anything had changed since that we became part of Global. We had one person when we first got acquired said, "Oh, things always change. It's going to be crap. It's going to be rubbish. It's going to be rubbish." I said, "Look, if in a year's time that has happened, or 2 years, come back to me with a list of things that you feel have changed. If they're accurate, I will give you free hosting for life." Oh, like inevitably, you never hear from them. And so that's the goal. And a lot of people are shocked by that. A lot of industry people are shocked by it. And it is the same. It is the same. So it's just head down, build good product, mate, and give outstanding customer service. That's what we've always been about.
Where do you see we're going a little bit into the industry side. Where do you see the podcast industry move into? Because there seems to be a bit of a conflict between just having the podcast channels versus YouTube video and YouTube and Rumble and things like that. Where do you see the future of podcasting going with?
I don't think it's as cataclysmic a shift as anyone would expect. So I think it's more iterative, more incremental this year. I don't think you'll see any major developments too much this year. You'll continue to see the evolution of walled gardens, Spotify walling their garden off, the YouTube's a walled garden. Their RSS ingestion is not very good. I anticipate the open ecosystem continuing to develop through Podcast Index, Podcasting 2.0, and so on and so forth. I just see more of the same, the tectonic plates slightly drifting apart a little bit more, Spotify getting further away from open podcasting, getting further away from Spotify. YouTube, like anyone that says YouTube's not a podcast just needs to get on with making good product and stop crying because your business will be left behind. I don't really care. If someone thinks a podcast is on YouTube, whatever, who cares? Like, you enjoy it on YouTube. If someone says a podcast audio only and they want to enjoy it on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Global Player, you enjoy it. Who cares? It's a terrible, boring, silly hill to die on. And it's a waste of time to debate it because who cares? No one goes, oh, you've just said you're going to Google that. Let me just point out, actually, you're not going to Google it. You're going to type in a search query into a massive index and it's going to return some results. No one gives a crap. Who cares? No one says that. No one cares. I'm going to Hoover. No, you're not. Actually, you're going to get your vacuum. Oh, shut up. No one says that. It's in the lexicon now.
Yeah.
Now, with that in mind, I think creators have to be more savvy around what they're genuinely doing, like what they're genuinely trying to build. I've got a podcast. It's a golf podcast. It's growing really fast. It's called Golf Lovers United. We get more views on YouTube than we do on our podcast, but we still get good numbers on our podcast. The problem that you've got is that it's the same in business. Like, it's the age-old business, right? If I open a shop and it's here and I go into the shop and there's no signage on the front of it and I've got loads of really good stuff inside, the lights are off, and I'm wondering, why are people not coming in, right? If I go, put the lights on and put some signs up and whatever, and I tell people that I'm there, some people come in, right? That's great. Let's assume this shop is a butcher's and it sells pork pies, right? So what do? I think, oh, wait a second. Okay, what could I do? Maybe I could go around the corner to the pub. Maybe I could give them some pork pies and they could put them on their bar and they'll put a little sign that says "By Mark's Butchers," and someone eats that when they've had a drink and they think the next time they want a pork pie, guess what they're going to do? They're going to go to my butcher's, right? Audio and video need to work like that. And the best people do that, right? Because guess what I'm going to do, right? I'm in my golf sim. I've got a golf simulator and I've got a big projector screen. I'm hitting balls at it. I've got a little control screen that's got my Spotify on it. And I think, do you know what? Actually, I've got a TV in there as well. Do you know what? Actually, I'm going to listen to the Talkville podcast by Rosenbaum and Tom Welling. But I'm going to put it on YouTube because I'm here and I'm swinging my golf club and the TV's there and I'm going to watch it. But guess what I then do? The next time I'm driving in the car, there's no TV. But I'll still listen to it. And I'll listen to the next episode there. So the problem that creators tend to have, and this is why you see so many people in podcasting, and it's always people that are not doing anything else. Like, they're not building good product. They're not really making an impact in the industry. All they're doing is whining on about why an RSS feed is a podcast and why YouTube isn't or Spotify isn't. Who cares? Like, genuinely, we've passed that. We genuinely have. Yes, let's build open podcasting. Let's advocate for RSS, but let's not pull the other stuff. Because that's like me sitting in my shop with the lights off, wondering why people aren't coming to me.
You got to go where the customers are. You got to go where the clients are. You got to reward the listeners.
And it's a funny thing as well, because a lot of people, I said earlier on that back in the day with podcast websites, we distribute to Apple, distribute to Stitcher, distribute wherever. It's like back in the day when people say, oh, I've got my podcast in Apple Podcasts, I'm not going to put it anywhere else. Like, why? It takes 1 minute. Why? Put it everywhere. Like, I might love your show, but I might use Overcast because I like supporting Marco.
Yeah.
Go there, be there. It's silly, man. So yeah, A bit of a ranty answer, but I think it's
No,
a silly argument.
I totally agree. I think people who just believe in the RSS feed as the only thing that is podcasting is short-sighted and not very savvy, and they will lose out because people's habits are changing and people's habits are going in different ways. Look, I've got the last question that I'm going to ask you before we go into the quick fire round, and it's about celebrities. And what we found through COVID was a lot of celebrities weren't working in the same way they were. And suddenly these podcasts popped up, which lasted a season, a year, and then went dormant. What's your view on celebrities, influencers being involved in podcasting? Or is it a positive thing? Does it promote the industry? Or if they're only there for 6 episodes and then nothing after that, are they damaging the industry?
If Tom Cruise comes to my village, more people will watch Top Gun 3. That's it. You can love Tom Cruise, you can hate Tom Cruise, but more people will watch Top Gun 3. That's it, right? Now, there's a lot of rubbish out there. There's a lot of celebrity shows that are crap, but I'll tell you now, there are a lot of non-celebrity shows that are just as crap. And there's a lot of celebrity shows that are great. There's a lot of non-celebrity shows that are great. It's equally relatable to the input that you put in. The quality of the output is equal to how serious you are about the input, right? Now, I mentioned it earlier. Michael Rosenbaum, Tom Welling, they do a Talkville show. It's about a rewatch of Smallville. It's brilliant. I love it. It's great. I love the Rob Lowe show. It's great. One of my favorite shows is Rock on Tours. Guy Pratt, Gary Kemp. I'm a huge muso, bass player, so Guy Pratt's one of my guys. Gary Kemp's a great songwriter, and he has some amazing... But David Coverdale, there's David frigging Coverdale on 3 times from Whitesnake. The guy's a legend. He's a right laugh. It's brilliant. They're celebrities, and they do a cracking job. No one ever talks about that. Instead, they talk about the people getting into podcasting through COVID who didn't stick around. And I get it, all right? A lot of those shows weren't very good. They weren't. I get it, all right? But if it gets 50 people listening to podcasts and they realize they've got this app on their phone or in their car or on the TV that they can actually, wait a minute, what's this? Other shows you might like based on such and such. All right, guess what? Now I listen to podcasts. Then Edison go and ask them for the Infinite Dial. Have you ever heard the word podcast? Yeah, I've just started listening to them. Boom, that number goes up and we all do better. It's the same people whining about RSS feeds it is about celebrities, mate. There is some crap, trust me. But there's some crap everywhere. It's if someone's serious about it. Like Michael, like I said, I keep using Rosenbaum as an example. He's cracked the code of promo in his podcast. Like he's cracked the code. What he does cross-media, cross-channel is outstanding. Really good. He does 2 shows, Inside of You and Talkville. And he cracked the code, man. He's cracked the code. He does good content. He promotes it using thoughtful social promos and clipping, and it works. He's put time and money into it. And let's be honest, there's a lot of people like me that got into podcasting because of Kevin Smith. He's the original celebrity I'm going to podcaster, unless you look at probably the granddaddy of all celebrity podcasters, Ricky Gervais. He got so many people into it. So celebrities are no different. The reason we get annoyed by celebrities, and I saw this at an event last year, so many indies, all the celebrities are coming in and taking our ears. Like, no, they're not. They put 1 episode out a week, right? There are 6 other days in that week. Make sure you're one of the 6 episodes that get listened to on that commute. So, yeah.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you very much for your answers. We're coming to the end of the interview. I asked the same 6 questions to all my guests. They're quick-fire questions. They don't need a quick-fire answer. First question is, what's the best decision that you've made?
Ever.
Personal, professional, what's the best decision?
Oh, you just have a little girl. Easy.
Okay. Okay. Another answer. Let's talk professional.
More professional one is, it's a hard one, that. There's a few of them. The best decision I ever made was when I was 23, 24, 25. I was earning 220 grand a year as a consultant, and I gave it all up to start my own business and start earning 20 grand a year again. And without that, none of this would happen.
What's the best piece of advice you've been given?
This is from an old mentor of mine who I sadly miss. I used to have a business with him. He was a great friend, Don. He always said, go and take the time to let your mind do its job. So as a great example of this, if I'm ever struggling with an issue, I can't solve a problem, I'm struggling with something, go and hit some golf balls, go for a walk, go and play with our little one. The solution's in there, it will present itself. Great advice.
That's really good advice. Who's the person that's helped you most in your career?
I think outside of my wife, Sam, she's always like this constant rock. I think probably the same guy, probably Don. There's been a lot of people. Kieran is a default answer on this one. Like, he's my brother in everything. It doesn't even bear talking about. He's the default answer to this. It's him beyond all else.
Right.
But outside of him, because he is the obvious one, it's probably Don. He was in his 60s when I was in my 20s, and he helped me to go from being a guy in his 20s to a guy in his 30s. And that development and growth and mentorship was massive. I think without him, he had the belief in me when I didn't have a belief in myself. So huge. Yeah.
Yeah. Tell me about a regret that you have.
Professionally, I can't think of any. Genuinely can't. No, I honestly can't think of any. Honestly.
You treated someone badly, said something that you shouldn't have said, made a decision
No, not really.
that had repercussions that you wish hadn't have decided. That's great.
No, I'm always genuinely fair with people and open with people, and I'm not known for not saying what I think. And I always treat people with respect and whatever. And I think that's very important. Service first and always giving. No, I honestly can't. No, I honestly can't think of a professional one. My personal regret is not living stateside for longer. I spent a hell of a lot of time in the US, like a lot of time, but I wanted to live there for probably a year. With COVID, we never got to do that. That's my only personal regret. And even if that's the only regret, then we're doing all right. Touch wood. I'll touch wood.
What are you most proud of?
Little girl, obviously. But I'm most proud of the way that Kieran and I flew in the face of what everyone thought that we could do. And we stuck to our plan. We had a lot of people saying it was silly. We got rid of partners, like our big affiliate partner. We got rid of them. We got rid of a few other partners that didn't believe in it. And we stuck to our guns. We were very honest and very open with each other. And we stuck to our guns. And it worked. Yeah, we don't stop and think that. Even when we got acquired, I was like, then let's crack on. What's next? Didn't even stop to think. Like the day we got acquired, I'm quite tall. I'm 6'1" and a bit. And the thing that I treated myself to when we got acquired was some pajama bottoms that fit me because I've got long legs. That was the level of us stopping and realizing what we'd done. So we should be proud of that.
Do you think, this isn't the questions, but so one of the things I've spoken to a lot of entrepreneurs, business owners on this show, and something I struggle with as well, is actually stopping, taking stock of what's happened, and actually not really patting yourself on the back, but actually appreciate some of the achievements that you've done over the years and not just move on to the next problem or the next thing that you got to deal with. Do you think that's something you suffer with?
Yeah, I don't think you ever really realize what you've done. A lot of people say it to me, you're successful. And I'm like, no, I'm not. That's not me being flippant or me being like humble brag or whatever. I just genuinely don't think that I've not done anything abnormal, but people have always said it like, oh, you're going out. How come you're speaking in Vegas at this event? You've been in this industry 2 minutes. I've got a golf podcast and I've got invited to Saudi Arabia to cover the Live Golf event as press. Like it's that, and it's happened quickly. And it's just because I put myself out there, but it's natural to me. It's just natural to me. And I never stopped to think about anything. But when I did it a few weeks ago, like I'm very fortunate. I've got a nice home in a nice place, nice area, decent bit of land around it. I've built a golf simulator. And I'm like, Jesus, man, like the 14-year-old council estate kid that really didn't have a ton of food to eat and everything was hard. If you just stop and think like that, kid, gee, look at this. And it's not, I don't want to be materialistic, but it's more, look at the space you've created. Like I've created space for our little girl to not have to worry about the stuff I worried. And little things like that, you need to just stop and think about, I think. Yeah, it's an important thing. I don't think enough people do that.
Why do you do what you do?
Honestly, just because I enjoy what I do. I have to be focused on something, and I want the freedom to spend time with our little girl. That's it. That's the life goal. That is it.
And what does legacy mean to you?
bringing up the best little one ever and letting her realize she can do what she wants and to be nice to people. I've got a little saying to her. I take her to nursery or daycare every morning, and she's only coming up to 2, but she's a little chatterbox, and she now repeats the saying back to me. I've taught her, and I always say to her as I get out of the car and I take her in, I say, be kind, be confident, and be yourself. And that's the legacy. Like, that's the thing. That's the whole thing.
That's amazing.
I've been doing that since she was tiny. She started daycare at 6 months old. We wanted to really make her quite a social, confident little girl, and she's like overconfident. So it's something that I said on day one when I took her, and I've said it ever since. And now she says it. She'll say it back to me, which is nice. So that, to me, that's legacy. If we can bring a little girl up that's got that, and it's funny because we've been acquired. She's fortunate. If I leave her nothing else, she'll get the house. If I leave her nothing else, she'll be fortunate enough to not have to worry too much. And the biggest concern that I've got is that she doesn't have the drive that me and her mum have got because of that. And I think that's something that we're really focused on. We want her to be herself and to really fight for what she wants to fight for. If we can, because of the position we're in, if we can just give her more options, like I had one option when I was a kid, I just had to fight for that option. Whereas she might have 5 options, and she's fortunate enough to be able to choose which one to fight for. So I think that's the important part of that legacy.
Amazing. And lastly, where can people find you if they want to find more about you or your business?
Just get me on Twitter or X, whatever Elon's calling it these days, at Mr. Asquith, and everything I do is there. That's my main social outlet.
Brilliant. Okay, Mark, thank you so much for your time. It's been amazing. I always love speaking to you, and thank you so much for being a guest on my show.
No, sincere pleasure, mate. Thank you for inviting me. The pleasure's all mine. Appreciate it.
Cheers.
Thank you for listening to Business Growth Talks. This podcast is released every Monday, so don't miss an episode by subscribing to all podcast platforms, including Apple and Spotify. Have a great day.